Welcome to Go a Little Mad, a horror movie podcast. My name is Jason, and I love scary movies.
I'm Briana, and I don't. And this week we watched The Invisible Man.
How can you watch that which you cannot see?
It's a great question.
Should have been a tagline for the movie.
Ooh, you're creative.
Missed opportunity.
Yeah. Just off the top, I'll excuse my voice. It's a lot better than it was, but it's still a little nasally sometimes. Not the vid, but I am getting over a cold.
I don't think people are going to know what you mean when you say the vid.
Okay, the panorama.
She didn't have COVID.
They know what I meant.
I feel like
they know what I meant.
The vid was just too casual, you know? It didn't call attention to itself enough to make you go, what is she talking about? You're just kind of like, yeah, okay.
Okay, well, slide into our DMs and tell me if you knew what I meant.
Or don't. It doesn't matter. I love this movie. I'm just going to say that right up top. Anytime you can watch a Scientologist get psychologically tortured for 2 hours is a really good time for me.
I thought it was a very good film that could have gone in the wrong direction, where I would not be calling it a very good film, because it also was very infuriating.
Oh, yeah. I mean, this film, it makes you angry. It makes you uncomfortable. It makes you afraid for somebody. And that's really kind of the point, right? That's what we're here for.
Yeah. I just was really rageful through the whole thing, and I'm sure you have notes about it.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely do. And also, you know, I'm sure it's also different as a woman. Being a man, I can empathize to a certain point, but I obviously can't understand what you're feeling. So, you know, it's a good horror movie for me. Maybe it's a little too close to home for you.
Well, I don't want to say it's close to home. I've never experienced abuse of any kind whatsoever. But who are you empathizing with?
I'm empathizing with the woman, obviously.
I know.
I mean, don't get me wrong. He had a sick house, and if I had that kind of technology, I would absolutely use it, but not for the hijinks that he uses it for. The hijinks is that's not a good term. I don't mean to downplay it, but I would use it to simply exist invisibly every day, not psychologically torment an ex-girlfriend or anything.
Right.
Spoiler alert.
Well, the house, by the way, I thought was hideous.
What?
And too cold. But the location, divine.
Yeah, it's a sweet location. I can't remember the name of it, but it's a house in Sydney that's somewhat infamous with the locals. They filmed this movie in Australia.
Okay, well, who filmed this movie? Let's talk about it. The credits. It was written and directed by Leigh Whannell, who just wrote the last film we talked about, Dead Silence.
Yeah, it's our second Leigh Whannell film, and back-to-back. Isn't that great? Wow. Yeah, that was actually my first flesh wound.
Oh.
Whoops.
Starring Elizabeth Moss as Cecilia, Aldous Hodge as James, Harriet Dwyer as Emily, Michael Dorman as Tom, and Oliver Jackson Cohen as Adrian.
Oliver Jackson Cohen smashes it out of the park, but when you see the final scene in the movie, or I guess the second to last scene in the movie, he's on screen for all of 6 minutes, and you're like, oh my God, this is the most I've seen him the entire movie.
Right.
Because he's not really in the movie.
Yeah.
His character is, but he is not.
I thought about that. I wondered, did they film all of his stuff just straight up front? Essentially, did they film the beginning and end of the film at once so that he was just done?
So as I had mentioned a moment ago, they filmed this in Australia, and I actually read that Leigh flew to London to film and or reshoot one specific scene with Oliver Jackson Cohen. And they had to touch up his face a little bit because he had changed since he actually filmed the movie. Mm-hmm. But he was great. For those of you who don't recognize the name, he was in both The Haunting of Hill House and The Haunting of Bly Manor. In Bly Manor, he played a pretty abusive, shitty man. Kind of the same sort of role he plays here. But in Hill House, he's probably my favorite character. He's actually a really tragic character, and you just really root for him. So I love him as an actor. I just every time I see him, it's just that little happy nostalgia feeling where it's oh, it's Luke. I want Luke to do well. But not in this movie.
No, I do not want him to do well. The summary. So I have a little song, just quick one line. This is the story of a man who has too much time on his hands. Do you get the reference? That's for all of the millennials out there.
Did you write that yourself?
Yeah, I did.
That's adorable.
Thanks.
Yeah, we just talked about that song recently because I said that I always used to confuse it with Train. I always used to think it was a Train song,
Yes.
but it's not a Train song. And I know that. I know that now.
Okay, the real summary, though, is Cecilia escapes an abusive relationship only to be tormented into violent insanity, at least according to everyone around her. But in reality, she is gaslit by her rich, powerful, and violent ex.
Did you write that as well?
Yes.
I could tell because you used the word gaslit.
Yes.
And this movie, okay, I feel like not to downplay or minimize anything anybody goes through, but I feel like on Twitter, the term gaslighting gets just like thrown around willy-nilly these days, where
Sure.
it's kind of just like people say gaslighting, but they mean like lying. Like if I tell you, oh yeah, I ate lunch at work today, but I really went out to lunch, like that's not gaslighting you. But people would say that's gaslighting
You
on
throw
Twitter.
that term around exactly like that.
No, I absolutely do not. But my point is, this movie, this is gaslighting. Like, this is the textbook definition. If somebody ever says, what is gaslighting? Just sit them down for 2 hours with this movie and they'll get it.
Yeah.
They'll also appreciate it because it is, again, terrible, terrible experience and like almost too real at times, but great movie. It's just a fantastic movie.
Yeah.
It really is.
Exactly.
Everyone should watch it.
So what was the Rotten Tomato score for this?
92% critic, 88% audience. I'm going to guess that 4% disparity is to people who were just really made uncomfortable by it, which is fair. But yeah, very well received.
And tell us what you found for Flesh Wounds.
This is one of those movies that, you know, we get these movies in Hollywood from time to time that just sort of get kicked around for 5-6 years. They have different writers, different actors, different directors attached to them from time to time. This was one of those movies. The most recent failed launch of this movie before this version of it actually involved Johnny Depp playing the titular Invisible Man, and it was set to be part of what was called the Dark Universe from Universal Studios. You might remember that Tom Cruise remake of The Mummy. While most people, at least that I knew at the time, saw it as a remake of the 1999 Brendan Fraser movie, which, by the way, nobody wanted that. Nobody wanted a remake of that.
Right.
Didn't need it. It's actually closer to a remake of the 1932 Boris Karloff film of the same name. I'm going to take you back in time, just a few years here. It's 2017. The Marvel Cinematic Universe is in full swing and arguably hadn't even reached its peak yet. Infinity War would come out in 2018, then Endgame in 2019. But it had already shown strong results through its first couple Avengers films, and it was all the buzz. Everybody was looking forward to Infinity War. As Hollywood does, everybody wanted their own cinematic universe. They love it because it kind of like, it's sort of like sequels, but you don't need the same actors. You don't need the same tone. It's different stories, but you've got that like built-in audience of people that are just committed to this universe. So everybody wanted their own. You know, DC has still tried to figure it out, and it's not going well for anybody. But Universal decided they should do that with a reboot of their classic monster movies. Dracula, Frankenstein, Invisible Man, Wolfman, Creature from the Black Lagoon, etc.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
But those are all separate movies.
Yes.
And doesn't a universe need to be connected?
Yes. Did you ever see The Mummy with Tom Cruise?
No.
So there's a little scene in there. There's just like a little scene in there. I'll get there.
Okay.
But yeah, just to kind of address that, the original movies weren't so much like connected, but they were connected in the sense that they were Universal's monster movies, you know, and like there was like, you know, The Mummy meets the Wolfman and like Abbott and Costello meet the Mummy.
Okay.
And those kind of movies, you know.
Okay.
So as a matter of fact, 2014 had Dracula Untold, starring Luke Evans, that originally was just kind of its own like origin story for Dracula, kind of casting him as this anti-hero. And it was trash. It was a trash movie. It bombed. It absolutely bombed. There were some last minute reshoots right before that movie came out, though, because they decided we're going to make this dark universe. So they added a couple scenes to that, but that movie just absolutely bombed critically, commercially. It was not a good movie. So they decided they were just going to kind of start it for real with 2017's The Mummy. The Mummy sucked. There's really no way around it. You know, I saw it in the theater and I don't remember many specific scenes or things that like upset me, but I remember being really bored. I remember looking at the time like, oh my God, is this over yet? And walking out like just, oh, thank God it was over. In that movie, there was a scene where he meets, I want to say it's Dr. Jekyll of Jekyll and Hyde fame, to kind of, who's like, there's more at play here than you know. And that was supposed to be like the kind of foot in the door of the dark universe. I wasn't the only one who thought it sucked. Everyone thought it sucked. It is at 15% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Oh, what?
With a Metacritic average at just above 4 out of 10. It had a budget of between $150 to $200 million. In the U.S. box office, it made $80 million. which is, about half its budget, if not less. It did make $410 million worldwide, so it did kind of get back most of its money, but that wasn't really enough for Universal. Just for context, in 2015, Avengers 2, The Age of Ultron in the worldwide box office made $1.4 billion. Yeah. And then Infinity War, which came out the next year, ended up going over $2 billion. So $400 million against those kinds of numbers wasn't quite in the same ballpark. Universal, after that, they were just like, no, we're not going forward with this dark universe. They had already had a few kind of in the starting stages. So they had a Van Helsing movie, which reportedly would have involved Channing Tatum in the titular role. There was a Hugh Jackman Van Helsing back in the day.
So that's not part of it.
No, that was like 2003. That was, They were going to do a Wolfman, reportedly with Dwayne Johnson. Oh. Or as his friends call him, the Bride of Frankenstein. They had actually signed Angelina Jolie to play on as the Bride of Frankenstein and Javier Bardem to play Frankenstein's monster. They had already hired a writer and director. Shortly after this went south, Angelina Jolie was like, no, I'm good. There was talk about maybe replacing her with Gal Gadot. But again, it never really went anywhere. It ended up getting canceled. That most of them never even really got off the ground. Like Channing Tatum and The Rock had not signed anything. They hadn't committed to anything, but it was more just like rumored. So there it was. The Dark Universe was dead, and they announced that any of the projects that ended up continuing forward would be standalone films, not part of the larger universe. So The Invisible Man with Johnny Depp still might have had a shot to get made, except then his legal troubles with Amber Heard popped up. Oh. So at that point, it was just like, nope, we're going to pull the plug on this. But in steps Jason Blum from Blumhouse and Lee Whannell, who wanted to make this movie. He did make it a point. He said his version was never intended to be a part of the larger universe. So, I'm sure we can assume this movie looks nothing like what we would have gotten.
Yeah.
And I admit, I'm not the world's biggest Johnny Depp fan, but I think even if you like him, you have to admit there's no way that a Johnny Depp Invisible Man is this good, right?
Well, first of all, I have so many thoughts. Johnny Depp would barely be in the film. Unless they do it more like the original.
It would definitely be more like the original, where the Invisible Man is the main character, who's sort of okay. The Invisible Man is based on a book by H.G. Wells.
Yes.
And the Invisible Man, I can't remember the character's actual name. It might actually be Adrian. I believe it might be the same name.
It's Griffin.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you.
Which is the last name of
I was about to say, it's
Adrian
Griffin, right? Yeah. So he goes invisible. He gets his powers to go invisible, and he just kind of becomes like a petty thief, and he just like steals stuff and like makes mischief. But then at one point he ends up not being able to become visible again, and he slowly loses his mind. And that's the story of the Invisible Man. And I have to imagine the Johnny Depp version would have, and could you imagine like a slightly out of his mind eccentric Johnny Depp? I can't imagine how he'd pull that off. That is not in his wheelhouse at all.
Strange.
But yeah, like I said, this is so much better than what we would have gotten, right?
Yeah, and so it wouldn't have been an abusive boyfriend situation, because that would be even more canceled by the Amber Heard situation, which is my other thought that I had.
Yeah, again, so it was the Johnny Depp version. It was really not this movie. It was just kind of the IP. It was Invisible Man, but it wasn't this Invisible Man movie with Johnny Depp. No.
Got it.
Yeah, but I think in the end, we got saved from like another shitty half-baked cinematic universe. We got one of the best horror films in recent memory out of it. Who doesn't win in this scenario? Johnny Depp, maybe, I guess, but he's fine. Yeah, he's doing all right.
Well, part of me thinks, I can't believe they thought of all of this. And there's someone out there who really wants to do this. And creatively, I feel disappointed for those people who want to like create this whole universe of bringing back these old horror films and putting them into like a more modern time. And like $400 million is a lot of money to me. I mean, I know in the grand scheme it's not $1 billion, but like, can't you just do it and in the end make $400 million? But I also think we don't need everything to be a freaking universe. Like, I don't need to feel like I need to watch 17 movies.
Exactly. Like, we tried to kind of, because I was very up to date on the Marvel Cinematic Universe when we started dating, and you weren't. And we kind of tried to like get you up to speed. We didn't even end up finishing because it's just so much. It's intimidating, and it's great in that movie theater, like as a fan who's like tracking it as it builds, but then like trying to introduce yourself to it later, or trying to introduce somebody else to it later, it's just so intimidating.
Yeah.
And that said, I mean, I wouldn't feel too bad for the creatives in this scenario. Like, call me cynical, but I feel like none of, like, the whole dark universe was never meant to be like a passion project for horror people. It was just, how can we capitalize on this craze? Where is this whole? Because I mean, if you think about The Mummy, it wasn't even a scary movie. Well, right, you didn't see it, but it wasn't a scary movie. It was a standard action adventure movie, and it was bad, you know? And
yeah, I've seen the original.
We didn't need 7 more of those. So.
Or the Brendan Fraser original.
Right.
Which wasn't scary.
Right. But yeah, so that is the history. Thanks for going along on that ride with me. I don't know how much more I'm going to be able to talk after this, but I do have just a couple of tiny little quick hits. The main character, Cecilia, is named after the Latin word cacus, which means blind or eyeless.
Oh.
Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Cecilia sounds nothing like cacus, but it's spelled with a C. So shut up.
Got it.
Later in the film, when Cecilia goes to Adrian's house to find evidence that he is still alive, she gets in using his door code, which is 1933, which is the year the original Invisible Man film came out.
Yeah, that's cool. That's cute. I like that.
Yeah. And that's what I got.
Cool.
Wait for applause. They're still clapping. They're still clapping. Okay, go ahead.
So touch points, as per usual, I have none. I want to hear about like your first experience with the film.
Oh, good. More of me talking. Yeah. I'll be honest, when I first saw the previews for this movie, when I first heard about this movie, I was like, fuck this movie. I have zero interest. I have negative interest in this movie. I was angry, you know? It's just the last thing we need is another frickin' rehashed, rebooted movie or franchise.
Oh.
I don't give a shit. Just come up with an original movie, please. You know, and I also not the biggest Elizabeth Moss fan because she's a Scientologist.
Yeah. Well, it's hard to even consider this. For me, this is not a remake. This is like an inspired by.
Well, right. But at the time, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
You know, like this was before I saw the movie.
Right.
So then the movie comes out, and the movie also came out at a very weird point. It was like March 2020.
Oh.
So
yeah.
This was like COVID. This movie ended up not, like, I think it technically got a theatrical release, but it ended up also being released on demand at the same time because, you know, they saw the writing on the wall. They're like, nobody's going to the movies right now. But after it came out, like, the buzz grew. Like, everybody I knew was, like, in the horror community was talking about how great this movie was. And, you know, after, like, my 4th or 5th glowing review, I was like, okay, I'm going to see it. And I watched it, and I freaking loved it. This movie's great. You know, it only came out in 2020, and this was my 3rd time watching it.
Oh.
Yeah, like, I love this movie. So, yeah, I was dragged to watch it kicking and screaming, but ended up really enjoying it.
Okay, cool. Well, let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it.
Initially, I didn't know any of that cinematic universe stuff, but in my little bit of research that I did, I learned that it was a novel and a film. And when I heard the title of the film, I was like, this sounds familiar, but like I just wasn't familiar with any of the other material. So like we said, it's inspired, I guess, by the H.G. Wells novel and the 1933 film, which was also inspired by the novel.
Yeah. Do you remember in like the late 90s, might have been early 2000s, but I'm fairly sure it was like 1998. There was a movie with Sean Connery called The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Oh, yeah.
That involved the Invisible Man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the same bandagey way, right?
Yep.
I'm remembering. Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. They should have used that in the cinematic universe. That was a good movie, but also not a good movie, I think.
Yeah, probably not. Probably doesn't hold up. I liked it when I was a kid,
Yeah.
but I haven't watched it
1
since.
star and 5 stars.
But I think that bandaged version is what we would have seen in the Johnny Depp movie. Yeah.
Okay, well, we start over the ocean. Waves are loud and crashing against rocks. It's very dark, which I hate because you can barely see what's going on. But the ocean sounds amazing. Credits appear on the screen as waves hit the rocks, and they're written in the splash, like clear, rippling water. So you can barely see them, like they're invisible.
No.
I read an article that was basically outlining some of the film commentary. And Bueno said he learned that water is the most difficult thing to get right with CGI. And I would agree, because although I thought it looked pretty cool, it definitely looked super fake.
Oh, yeah. Water's hard, very hard.
Yeah. Above the ocean, at the top of the cliff, is a house. And that is the house that we are focused on.
And I just want to throw a quick disclaimer up top. This movie is a serious story about abuse. It's tough to watch at some points. Like, it makes you uncomfortable. But at its heart, this is a comedy podcast a little bit. So I'm going to make some jokes here, and I'm sorry. Like, I feel bad. I feel like I just need to say that disclaimer because I don't ever want to make jokes at the expense of an abuse victim, even if they're fictional.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think any of my jokes are at the expense of her. But I just, again, want to acknowledge this isn't a funny situation. But I'm going to try my hardest to make it one. Okay? So I'm sorry, everybody.
What a feat. Cecilia is sleeping, or so it seems. She opens her eyes, and you can tell she hasn't really been sleeping. Aside from the waves, it is silent as she slowly unwraps herself from the covers and even more delicately removes his arm from her waist. Wendell said the opening sequence did initially have original music for it, but along with the sound team, it was decided that it works better without.
Agreed.
Yeah,
absolutely.
The silence was powerful, very much like when they used it in Dead Silence, I thought.
Yeah, I mean, it puts you in that moment. Like, you're scared with her because every sound is amplified. And you're oh my God, don't wake him up.
She's very clearly nervous as she slowly emerges from the bed and then lifts the mattress a little on her side. I was freaking out at this point. I was like, what the fuck are you doing? And I feel like he would wake up at this point. I feel like I would wake up at this point. If you started lifting the mattress.
Well, you didn't know at this point, but he was drugged.
Right.
Yes.
Forgot that.
Their bedroom is just so open. I could never sleep in there.
It's so big.
There's way too much open space on either side.
Yeah.
I'd feel like there were people everywhere.
She pulls out the bottle of pills, an impossible task to complete silently, but she does it. It's diazepam.
Now, is that Pan or Pam?
Pam with a B.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. On his end table, she picks up a glass of water and swirls it around. Did she put the drugs in there and we just didn't see her put the drugs in there? Or had she already put the drugs in there? It was very confusing.
She had already put the drugs in there. I think she was looking to see how much water was left and swirling it to see how much of like the, crushed or whatever came up to see like how much of this did he ingest already? How safe am I basically?
She starts moving toward the bathroom and like freezes when he stirs. In the bathroom, she pours out the glass of water. Then she goes to the closet and pulls open a vent that has a suitcase shoved in it. In the suitcase is all the important stuff like social security card, passport, yada, yada.
At this point, all I can think is like, thank God they live in like a modern house because our house, the floorboard would have creaked so loud so many times by now.
Yeah.
Like if this house had not been built in like 2004, she would have been caught out like 6 times on her way to the bathroom.
Uh-huh. She leaves the bedroom and carries a ladder to adjust the camera so she can see him. Personally, I feel like she's doing too much. It would just need to be get dressed and get the bag and skedaddle, but here we are. On her phone, she has the app with the camera on it so she can see him, and she goes to his lab, which has like computers. There's a shooting range in there, plus the camera system for the house. She needed a code to get into that room and a code to get into the computer to turn off the cameras. I think this is a plot hole. I think, in this kind of dynamic of a quote unquote relationship, she would not have these codes. Why would she ever need to go into his lab and access his computer,
Well, I will say from what I've seen in these kinds of relationships, after a certain point, there is kind of a complacency and arrogance on the part of the abuser who's like, whatever, she can have the codes to the lab because she's not going to fucking leave.
I guess,
and I'm not saying that is the case, but I've seen that kind of dynamic before.
That's a perfect, if you were writing this and then you thought that, you'd be like, yes, okay, this works. That's good enough. On her way out, she passes I think it's a glass room set up within the room, right? Because she needs a code to get into it later. And it has, I'm really struggling to describe what this is, but it's basically like 2 poles and you look at it and maybe it has like little lights on the pole, almost set up in a way that you would stand in the middle of and then something would happen because you're standing there.
Yeah. If you could picture the sort of thing that you would like, if you've ever been in like a clean room or something and you have to walk through those little poles that kind of spray you and sanitize you. If you could picture that, that's kind of like what it was. Or if you just picture like what Iron Man would keep his suit on.
Oh yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah.
So she's kind of confused by it as she passes it. As she scampers through the house, she trips on a metal dog bowl, so it makes a noise.
And this was your first like expletive of the movie. You had actually made a couple comments like under your breath.
Yeah.
When she was like getting the ladder earlier, you're like, what the fuck, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
You were very tense. Because we've talked about this before, you don't like when women sneak around in movies, right?
No.
That's something that puts you on edge.
Yes.
So this is very stressful for you. And as she kicked that dog bowl, you just really loud.
Yeah.
You hated it.
Yeah. Because even though I know there's a whole movie about to happen, I'm like, oh, she's dead. Like, she's dead right now. End of film.
Yeah.
But he doesn't stir. Truly cannot believe that. Also, where is the dog? Because at this point, the dog would surely wake up. Finally, she gets dressed. The camera pans from her to the hallway, though there's seemingly nothing there. That's the first time the camera does this. She gets to the garage, and the dog comes out and whimpers. She can't take him, but she tries to take off this elaborate collar that I assume will zap him if he gets to a certain point, like a boundary line. So when she manages to unsnap it, she's kind of using a lot of force because it was giving her trouble. And her hand hits the car, which causes the car alarm to go off, blaring.
Fuck off, says Briana.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Another little warning. Briana was very... lots of profanity from her throughout this film. So
yep.
You're going to hear lots of profanity from me quoting her.
So she's running now. Surrounding the property is this massive cement wall. It's like a freaking fortress. She climbs up that, runs through the woods, and in the meantime, lights are turning on in the house. He is awake. She reaches the road, and whoever is supposed to be there to pick her up isn't there. She hears a noise in the woods, but there's nothing. And then finally a car comes. And I mean, like, how do you know it's not him? Like, I'm panicking.
Yeah, which is, I mean, that's a great question. Like, my first time watching the movie, I definitely had the same thought. I was like, that's going to be him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But she's not worried. It's her sister, Emily. She runs toward it instead of just waiting for the car to reach her. And in that, drops the medication out of her bag, but she doesn't notice. When she gets in the car, Emily doesn't even know what's going on. Cecilia's like, just drive. I don't like this sister. I didn't like her immediately. How does she not know what's going on? Also, at this point, what do you think is going on? Like, she's running away from a boyfriend in the middle of the night. What do you think?
Again, with these kinds of abusive relationships, there are many times where like the abused person's family has no idea because on the outside it seems like a perfectly healthy relationship. So like I get her not necessarily knowing, but like the way she acts throughout this entire movie just shows a complete lack of empathy for her sister.
Yeah.
She's kind of the worst.
I guess they bicker a little bit because she doesn't immediately drive. And
wait, let me just amend that. She's not the worst. Like, the worst is obviously the abusive, murderous asshole boyfriend. Sure. But I just mean for a sister, she's kind of the worst.
Agreed.
I just wanted to clarify,
So as they're kind of bickering, he bursts out of the woods and starts banging aggressively on the window, punching it until it smashes. They do drive off, and he eventually loses his grip, but he does find the drugs on the ground.
Ooh. And so at this point, this all happened very quickly.
Yes.
And you asked me, you're like, can you please pause this movie so I can like catch up on my notes?
Yeah.
Which we don't do often. Like we try not to do that because, pausing a movie kind of takes you out of the immersion. But sometimes a lot happens and you really have to, write. So while you were catching up on your notes, I was pretty good on mine. So I opened Reddit just like past the time. And I learned that in 1845, 79 people died in a bridge collapse that happened because a large crowd had gathered to watch a clown in a bathtub being pulled up a river by 4 geese. I didn't want to look anything else up about that. Like, I just wanted to take that information and share that information. I've got nothing about it to elaborate on. I wanted to give that to you as my gift.
Another flesh wound.
Yeah.
Well, back to this scene. So us having to pause really speaks to the scene itself. It was like captivating where I was taking in everything that was happening, but like not able to be typing at the same time. It was a very cool opening sequence. And it does a lot in a short time. So we don't ever see the relationship that she's running from. We don't know anything about who they were as a couple until this moment where she's, running for her life. We're on Cecilia's side immediately, though. I feel like we understand that this is an abusive and controlling relationship. She literally needs to run from him. And this was done on purpose, of course. Wannell wanted to, quote, drop the audience in Cecilia's situation without any backstory and make them feel everything through her. He says, and luckily I had Elizabeth Moss, who is very good at communicating a lot to the audience without saying anything. And I haven't seen a lot of Elizabeth Moss's work. I've seen some of The Handmaid's Tale until it gave me a mental breakdown. But in just what I've seen of that, I would agree that she's very good at doing that.
She is, yeah, she is. She was I was first introduced to her in Mad Men. She was great in Mad Men.
The way it was filmed was great. It was so tense. You know, he could wake up at any moment. The only sound is the ocean. We're silent along with her, and we're championing her, encouraging her the whole way. Whannell said that he enjoys weaponizing an audience's knowledge of movies against them. There's multiple moments where you would expect something to happen to foil this plan. Like, will Adrian open his eyes or will he appear suddenly? But it never happens. And instead, you're just on edge the whole time, just like Cecilia. Next is 2 weeks later. Cecilia is looking at a window and James comes in to check on her. He's maybe her sister's boyfriend. It's never clear.
Yeah, it's never really clear. But I mean, he's at least her sister's friend, because what we can extrapolate from this situation is Cecilia doesn't have friends.
Right.
Like, she was not allowed to have friends. So all she has is this either friend slash boyfriend. But if they're a couple, they're not even living together. Like, it's not a very serious thing. Yeah, but he's wonderful. James is like the best character in the movie.
Yes, he's perfect.
Just every time you think he's going to be like a dick, and when he has reason to be a dick, he's still great. And even when he's wrong, he's still so great about it. I just love him. James is too good for this world.
I wish we had commentary on that, because it had to be done on purpose, that he would be this, like, not a perfect man, because he's not. Like, he does make mistakes, but he does them in the way that any, like, good man would make a mistake and move on or learn from it, I guess, as opposed to Adrian, who is scum of the earth.
Just a step below good man.
Yeah, just, almost there. He encourages her to go outside. She's been there for 2 weeks and hasn't left the house. So she has, like, gone outside, we learned, but she hasn't gone anywhere. So she does go outside. Her job is to go to the mailbox and retrieve the mail. Her shoulders are hunched. Her palms are clenched. So we can see, she's still healing and is still extremely anxious. She goes very quickly to the mailbox in an I want to get this over with kind of way. And when she opens it up to get the mail, a man comes up running behind her. It's just a runner, someone in the neighborhood, but it freaks her out. She runs back to the house. He's like, hey, that's okay. That's the furthest you've gone since you arrived. Later, James is doing, like, minor renovation work in the house while she's reading an article about spying through webcams. And she's, like, scratching out her webcam when the doorbell rings. It scares her. She physically jumps, but it's just Emily, her sister.
Yeah, which is honestly just, like, it's good practice, even if you're not hiding from an abusive ex. Like, I always cover up my camera with a Post-it when I'm working.
James answers the door. Cecilia is not happy that Emily showed up because Adrian knows where she lives and he will follow her to, the safe house. Emily's, at first I was like, what are you doing? Like, why are you doing this? And you can just tell that they have tension between them as sisters. Like, their relationship is not great.
Yeah.
But she's like, I'm not messing up your plan because Adrian is dead. He killed himself. And this made the news basically because he is, like, huge in the tech industry and, like, really rich.
Yeah, it said he's like an optical genius. Like, he's really great with cameras and imagery and things like that.
Cecilia is in shock and walks to the bathroom and kind of just collapses there. Later at the dinner table, Cecilia makes her doubts known for the first time. She's like, it just doesn't make sense that he would kill himself because he was so in control of everything, including her, what she ate, what she wore when she left the house, and even what she thought. She shares that if he didn't like what he assumed she thought, he would, and she kind of just trails off. And James is like, he would what? He would hit you? Which he suggests as though that's not obvious. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I will say that's like she literally had to be broken out of her house in the middle of the night. Like, it shouldn't be a surprise to anyone that there's physicality involved here.
Right. They comfort her and tell her that she's safe now because he's gone. Movie over. So our next movie is, just kidding. The next day, she goes outside. She's still tentative initially, but she does it. Her back is straight. She looks a lot more assured when she, goes to the mailbox. In the kitchen, James is talking to his teenage daughter, Sydney, about goals and college when she comes in and drops the mail in his lap. Yay. They applaud her. James tells her that something is in the mail for her, except no one knows that she's there. So literally not a single soul other than Emily knows where she is. And Emily's not going to just like, even though the guy's dead, I don't think she's going to tell anyone. I would just leave. I would not even open that mail, and I would just go to another place because like who's sending this? Who knows you're here?
Yeah, so here's my logical, like if I wanted to make sense of this, if I had to make sense of this, Adrian found out that she was there before he killed himself and, you know, instructed his attorney or whoever sent this letter, like, she's staying here.
Okay.
You know, because like he would find out. Like obviously she thinks he is capable of finding out.
Yeah.
And, you know, even in theory without his super suit, he might have a way of finding out. So that's what I would assume. But again, that's more just like trying to find an explanation.
Yeah, yeah.
You know?
But good enough. It's a letter from a lawyer, and the next we see is they're driving to San Francisco. So her and Emily. I think Emily is a lawyer too, it seems like, in this follow-up scene.
Yeah, it definitely seems that.
So the lawyer is Adrian's brother, Tom.
Dick bag.
Yes.
Like immediately gives off douche vibes. Hate him.
I was going to ask you what your initial thoughts of him were, because immediately I was like, absolutely no doubt he is involved.
2 words for you. Dick bag.
Adrian required that this whole thing be done in person. And Tom starts reading a letter that Adrian wrote to Cecilia. And it's not a great letter. It's not even like a suicide letter. It's mostly like, why couldn't you have just...
Yeah, I mean, it's abuser 101. It's look at all that I do for you and how ungrateful you are and how you repay me for being so good to you. And I don't want to have to strike you and physically restrain you in our home, but you make me do that. And it's only because I love you. And why are you so ungrateful for what I do for you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're very good at that.
I fucking hate him. God, he's the worst kind of person, even though he's fake.
It's being read by Tom in this accusatory tone, and Emily just shuts that shit down. She's like, yeah, we'll read it later. And he's like, well, I'm supposed to read it out loud. And she's like, you can email me and we'll read this later. Thank you. And he says something about how like lots of women want to get close to him, his brother, because of the money. And Emily's like, if we were close to him, we would not be here. And he gestures to the urn that's on the table, suggesting that they are in fact close to him.
He actually says that. He said, you are physically close to him.
Yeah.
Which I believe he was in the room. He was in the room watching this the whole time.
Yes, for sure. That just gave me chills, but like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The meeting ends with him telling her that she's getting $5 million in installments of $100,000 every month over the next few years. There's like taxes and stuff involved, but he's waiving that out of the kindness of his heart. I don't know how you can just like waive taxes, but I swear that's what he said.
Yeah, he said it was tax-free, and I think the implication is like, you know, she gets 5 million, quote unquote, tax-free, and if so, you know, you give somebody 6 million and they're taxed $1 million, they take home 5. Like, we're going to give you 5 million plus the amount that the taxes would cost.
Oh.
That's what I assume. Later on in the movie, you find out that this was kind of part of his plan the whole time, because one of the stipulations is if she's charged with a crime, she loses the money. And later on, we find out that that's part of his whole plan. But even if, like, if he's dead, let's assume he's dead, this is still a really shitty abusive thing, because it's like, even though I'm dead and I am no longer a part of your life, I'm going to give you this money and I'm still going to have that kind of control on you. I'm still going to control your financial situation. And like, that's just so slimy. It's just so slimy.
Right. And it's also doing this whole thought of, I'm giving you money out of the kindness of my heart, and you deserve this money because you just dealt with this abuser for however long. But also the question is, do you even want this money? Because do you want to be tied to this person ever whatsoever? And so now you have this whole thing in your brain going, well, do I just take $5 million or do I just let myself be free? And that's a really hard choice, because personally, I know that I don't want that money, but I also don't know that I would be so easily able to just say, no, I'm not going to sign anything. I did get nervous because they're requiring her bank information so they can just like automatically deposit it. I don't know that I would want to give my bank account information to my abuser's brother.
Yeah, I think the answer in this situation, and first of all, like, I'd take the money 100% every time. Fuck it. It's money. These stipulations are whatever. I can't commit a crime. Okay, that's fine. If I commit a crime, I'm going to jail anyway. Who cares?
Yeah.
But I can do things with this money, and it gives me freedom, more freedom than I could have without it. But that said, I think I am also with you there. And what I would do is I would open a new banking account specifically for this to get deposited in, and then just move that money to my real banking account.
Yes.
Myself. That's all you do.
Brilliant.
Yeah, you don't give them that information.
Back at the house, she presents a ladder to James and his daughter as a thank you for taking her in. And it's like, you just got $5 million and you're giving them a ladder. She makes this big show of how convenient it'll be having, the ladder to get projects done, especially to retrieve whatever's up on the ledge, that she's pointing at. It's an envelope. They open it, and it's a new bank account where she'll be depositing $10,000 every month for Sydney's college. And they celebrate with champagne. As they celebrate, the camera pans to watch them from down the hallway, like someone is watching.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely Adrian's view. Like, that's Adrian watching them, in my mind.
Yeah. This is the second time the camera does this. The first time was when she was escaping. And it's done throughout the film. It's like, for me, I thought really cool, unique, and effective. And Whale says that what I decided is that the camera should move away from the actors as if it had a mind of its own, as if it knew more than the characters did. And then in the commentary, it references the shot at 25 minutes, 31 seconds, which, because it was like that comment and then this comment, I think they're talking about this scene. And he basically says that he was trying to suggest that someone was there. Now, was anyone? We don't know. A lot of the times I feel like when the camera does this, it's like, we don't know. And that's just like playing with the audience, just like it's playing with her eventually.
Yeah, but given the events over the next couple days, I think he was already there. Because it's like the very next day is when things start.
Yeah, yeah. In her room, she unwraps a dress. The camera pans around to where there's no one, then comes back and she hangs up the dress. She opens up another bag of clothes, then stops and turns around. She can feel someone watching her, but she eventually just catches a breath and relaxes herself. The next morning, she's making breakfast, and James, who's a cop, is off to work. He asks her to wake up Sydney, which is what she does as soon as James leaves. The moment she steps away from the counter where she was chopping something, the knife is swiped. And a few moments later, the stove catches on fire. She runs in, and the daughter runs in using the extinguisher.
Yeah, you can actually see, after the knife is grabbed, you can see the flame getting higher underneath the pot on the stove. So it's kind of, what you're watching is somebody turn up the knob underneath the pan.
So I'm glad we know really quickly that he's here. I wasn't sure how they were going to play this. They could have gone another way, probably, where they could have kept us wondering what was going on and losing trust in Cecilia. Is she just losing her mind, or is he really here? And we could have found out at the end or something. But I'm glad they didn't go that way. That night in the hallway, the camera pans around to her in the room on the computer. She glances up to the hallway, feeling like someone is there. She calls out for James, but he's either not there, or I think he's just asleep maybe. As she gets up and walks toward the door, the camera moves away, like someone would be moving out of the doorway and trying to kind of hide in the hallway. She creeps down the hallway, goes into the living room, and turns on the light. And also, by the way the camera moved, Adrian would be behind her now, which is so creepy. As she's like creeping down the hall, what she thinks might be towards something, the real horror is actually behind her. She goes down the hallway, she goes into the living room, and turns on the light. Props to her for turning on the light. She stays still, trying to listen, then moves on to the kitchen where she turns on the light again. There's a noise, and the camera pans around, and from behind her, we see that the door to the outside, which is kind of like in the living room, is open.
And they have one of those like chain locks that, slides in and then across.
Yeah, like a hotel.
Locks in place. Yeah, exactly. And like when she looks over, it's like swinging a little bit. Ooh. Yes, it's creepy, but to like make it less creepy, you can just imagine like Adrian in like his Invisible Man suit, just like poking it and making it swing each time. That helped make it not be creeped out by it.
She goes to the door and even goes outside. And I'm just like, fucking why? Why are you going outside? It's cold and we can see her breath. And then behind her, we can see breath.
Yeah, so that scene is really good. I really love that scene because there's no like musical sting to indicate. She doesn't notice, she doesn't turn around and gasp. It just happens. She doesn't see it. She turns around, she goes back inside, and that's it.
Yep.
And like I really love that scene. And like I looked at you to even like make sure that you had seen it, because sometimes, you know, if you're typing and you're looking at your screen and looking down for 1 second, you miss it. And you nodded. You're like, "Yeah, I saw that." But that was something that was ruined in the trailers. And that's like one of the reasons I hate movie trailers. And actually, I read how Jason Blum wanted more in the trailer, and Lee Wannell talked him out of it and was like, absolutely not, we cannot give away any more in the trailer. Later, Jason Blum was like, yeah, he was totally right. But that was a scene that just, it's such a good scene, and I just hate it when some of the best scares or like the most inventive scares are given away in the trailer, you know?
Did you not suspect, though? Because when they show her breath, like if you think about movies, they never show breath.
I mean, I don't know if I suspected it, because when I had seen it, I had already seen it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But I might have thought of it. But even then, like, it's still just like a, oh, wow.
Yeah.
You know, but it's wasted on a trailer. It's absolutely wasted.
That night, the sheets get pulled off of her. I don't even know how she's sleeping at this point. I wouldn't have been sleeping. And a camera flashes. It's actually the phone. Like, he's taking pictures of her, which is so fucking creepy. Ugh. She wakes up and she sees a dummy with a scarf, coat, hat, and sunglasses on. She's sleeping in the daughter's room.
And that's a nod, by the way, to The Invisible Man.
It is. It's an homage to the 1933 film, because that's basically how the Invisible Man was dressed. But why it was in the room was because the daughter is into fashion and clothing design, so she has like a dummy mannequin. She gets up and finds the bedding bunched up on the floor, and she like hears another noise. She turns around and looks at the chair. She can see that someone is sitting in the chair.
Yeah, there's like a little indent in the cushion. I love that.
I love what they do with upholstery and carpeting, honestly. It's so subtle, but you're looking at it, and it's just very unsettling to be looking at an empty chair but know that someone is there. It's like crazy. She, I guess, kind of psychs herself out of that, and she pulls up the bedding from the floor. And as she's pulling the sheet, she suddenly can't pull it anymore. And this part was really creepy because someone is standing on the sheets. And the way the sheets look, like think about if your sheet is caught on something, like maybe it got caught in the corner of the bed as you're trying to pull it up. You can see that. You can see, oh, it's caught on this little corner, and you just unravel it and go. But it is completely flat on the floor, which is unnatural considering there's nothing there.
Yeah, you can actually see a little tiny bump in the middle where, like, if somebody were standing on it with both feet, that little bit would be the part between their feet. It's a really good scene, yeah.
I think he steps off eventually as she pulls, and that whole sequence is what freaks her out. She screams, James comes running in, the daughter wakes up. So this scene was confusing to me because I watched the trailer for, our trailer reviews for TikTok. And in the trailer, you see a phone floating. A floating phone in the air. And that is seemingly what makes Cecilia scream. And I was like, it never happens. So I was like, am I losing my mind? Like Cecilia, was I just being gaslit? No. This scene itself, what happens in the movie is a pickup scene, which means it was filmed after wrapping. The original scene, it did have the floating phone.
Yeah, that was when he took the pictures of her when she was laying in bed. Yeah.
And it was used in the trailer, but then was changed because Wannell felt like it could be more tense to just have the sheets and not have the phone.
Yeah,
and I mean, agree.
Yeah, it's definitely like seeing a phone floating there as it's taking the pictures is kind of creepy, but it's also just like kind of silly.
It's cheesy.
Yeah, it takes away from it. It's in like so much in horror is like you get more effectiveness based on what you don't show versus what you show. And like just the idea of these flashes and that noise of the photo being taken.
Yeah.
Like it was a really good scene.
So James comes running in. He's kind of annoyed with her, but he does calm her down. This is a perfect example of what you were talking about.
Yeah, that's like, as much as I want to like #believe women, he is absolutely right in this scenario. You want to believe somebody, but it is infinitely more likely that she has some sort of PTSD.
Sure.
Of course she does. Who wouldn't after going through what she went through? That's way more likely than her dead boyfriend's invisible.
And his response is, don't let this haunt you. Like, he almost like validates her, but is like, don't let this haunt you. And he also reminds her that she has an important job interview tomorrow, and he doesn't, want this asshole to ruin it. Well, guess fucking what? This asshole's going to ruin it. I already knew that.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't think she was right for this job anyway. Because in this job interview, okay, so she goes to this job interview, she greets the guy, and he's like asking her interview questions.
By the way, do you know what this place is? It's called Ruler. Like, what is she interviewing for?
I saw it as some sort of like architectural / design firm.
Okay.
Because he asks her. So the next scene, I guess before I get into it, I'll briefly say what happens in the next scene. She goes to this job interview. She meets this gentleman. They exchange a couple lines, and she's got this big portfolio. And he's like, okay, let me see some of your work. And she opens it. It is empty.
Yeah.
And then she stands up. She's kind of freaking out because immediately she knows. She's like, Adrian did this to me. And then she passes out, falls to the ground. You knew it. As soon as she grabbed the portfolio, you were like, nothing's going to be in there, obviously, which was super smart. I didn't see that. My first time watching it, I didn't even see that coming. But my point is, she is better off without this job. Because in the beginning of the scene, the guy interviewing her asks her like what she went to Paris for. And he's just like, is that where all beautiful girls go?
Yes.
It's like, dude, this is a job interview. Mm-hmm. Okay, don't be a creep. So you know what? She didn't want this job anyway.
Yeah, I did note that he was flirting with her, and I think I asked it as a question. I'm like, is he flirting with her? Why?
It's inappropriate, okay? I've only flirted in like a handful of job interviews, and it was only when the girl was really, really pretty, okay? So it's defensible. It's fine.
Yeah. I think this is the first time I said, did I say it out loud? This guy needs to get a fucking life. Not the interviewer, but Adrian.
So you didn't say it here. You said it back at the fire scene in the kitchen.
Okay.
We like kind of flew by it, and I didn't want to interrupt you and backtrack. But yes, when like the thing set on fire, you screamed, "Get a life, guy. You have so much money. Get a life." That is so annoying. What a fucking loser.
Get a life. I wrote here, everyone say no more to rich white men, okay? Say no. They need to be told no for all things. Say no to little things like, can you pick me up some chips at the store? No. Say no to big things like, do you want to have a baby? Say no. Say no across the gamut. They need to hear no.
So you're not going to get me chips at the store anymore?
You're not a rich white man. Sorry.
You're right. I'm pretty poor. Thank you.
So I will get you chips.
Thank you for putting me in my place.
Okay, so she's passed out. I already know what's coming, but I'll save it because it's coming in the next paragraph. But at the hospital with James, the doctor tells her that she's fine, but she shouldn't drive and that they'll call her later with the test results. There's also a moment where she watches a gurney go by with someone on it, and they're like all wrapped up in bandages. You can't see their body at all because of it. And that's another homage to the original film because that's exactly how the Invisible Man looked. At home, she takes a shower. The promo materials everywhere on the entire internet for this movie include a handprint on the steamy glass shower door. So I was expecting to see that, and we do not.
And that's just something I want to pause and appreciate because, I said earlier with that breath scene, I felt like it was ruined in the trailer. Mm-hmm. And now with this hand and with this phone thing, you have used these in the trailer and not the movie. So what you've done is you've kind of set up your concept, you've shown it to people and gotten them interested without actually ruining anything in the movie. And that is wonderful. Like I've talked about this before. I avoid trailers for movies, especially scary movies, because most of the time you're better off going in without some knowledge of whatever it is in the trailer. There's always something in the trailer that you're either like waiting for that scene or you're like, oh, based on that, I think this. Yeah. And like whatever it is, it colors you before you go into the movie. Whereas these scenes, it's almost sort of like another game within it where it's like you're waiting for these scenes to happen and then they don't happen and it takes you further outside of your comfort zone. It's fantastic. And I wish more horror movies and trailers took that approach.
Well, and similar to the floating phone, it was there originally, but Wannell decided that the discovery of the pill bottle, which we get to in a second, was more chilling. I'm not sure I find the bottle as scary because we have to know that she knows that she lost that bottle when she sees it in the sink later. But as someone who is sometimes afraid of showering alone in the house for this exact thing, I think that the handprint is very scary.
Well, it is, but you also have to think about the fact that the bottle wasn't there when she went into the shower.
Yeah,
So
true.
it still gives you that sense of somebody was in there while she was in the shower.
Right. And it also goes back to what Wannell said in the commentary before about how he does like to play with audience expectations. Like, you would expect that. I would expect a handprint on the glass or something to be written on the mirror in the steam, and like that doesn't happen. Something unique happens. The phone rings when she gets out of the shower, and it's the doctor telling her that the diazepam was likely the cause of the fainting. And she's like, what? I'm not taking that. And while she's on the phone, she finds it in the sink. Her blood work showed high amounts of it and also showed something else. And the doctor is trying to tell her, but she basically just drops the phone when she finds the pill bottle.
Yeah, and I'm sure that never comes back.
Yeah, I mean, I know what that is. She's pregnant, obviously. I knew when she fainted that she was pregnant. Because it's just a played out thing. Woman faints who doesn't know she's pregnant, and that's how she learns she's pregnant. Yeah.
I guess I never really paid attention to that trope before. I didn't know that was a thing.
It's like a drama thing, like a soap opera kind of thing. Like, woman in trouble, this is how she discovers that she's pregnant, like under duress. When she told James and Emily about the abuse, she mentioned that, so back to like the table earlier, she mentioned how he had wanted to have a baby, but she knew she would never be free of him if that happened, so she was secretly on birth control. So that's one reason why I knew also. And also what we learn here is that he's been drugging her, right? Because her blood work revealed that there were high amounts of diazepam.
Yes, he drugged her. That's why she fainted. She fainted
Right.
because he drugged her same way that she drugged him.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is like, well, it was wrong to drug him, but also, I mean, she needed to. So
Oh yeah,
it's
I
fine.
I didn't mean to imply that it was
No.
fair of him to do it because she did
No,
it to him.
it's not. But it's like, it's kind of just like a funny thing. Like, that's the least of what he did, I think.
Real funny. This movie is the funniest movie I've ever seen.
Hilarious. She goes back to Tom's office with James and she says, tell him to stop. The brother tries to get on James' side by having this little like, what the fuck's this crazy bitch talking about thing. And James is not having it. He's like, I don't know what she's talking about, but I know it's serious. Which, again, this is how to be a man. A lesson right there. James, perfect. She explains that one time she was sitting and planning this entire thing in her head, in silence, and he was just staring at her. Eventually he said, you could never leave me. I'll always find you, and you won't know I'm there until I tell you. She puts the bottle on the table, and Tom plays dumb. She says he's figured out a way to be invisible. He's a world leader in the field of optics. And I didn't really know what optics was. It's the scientific study of sight and the behavior of light, or the properties of transmission and deflection of other forms of radiation. And this is where I also noted that Adrian and Tom, their last name is Griffin, which is significant to the novel. The protagonist is named Griffin, and he's also an optics scientist. In the film, the protagonist's last name is Griffin, and he's a chemist. So I think it's kind of cool. Each iteration of this is different. They look at her like she's crazy, but they're stupid for not seeing this as a possibility. He has unlimited funds. He's brilliant. He's a leader in the field.
I mean,
why isn't this possible? If anyone could do it, it would be him.
Yeah, but I wouldn't say they're stupid because as far as we know in this world, nobody's come close. It's not like this is like we almost have invisibility technology. Like just the idea that somebody could be fully invisible is, I mean, that'd be like today. Like if you know, you knew somebody that was like an optic scientist, would you just immediately jump to assume that they invented a full invisibility suit? No, I mean, it's something that's so far out of reach that it's crazy.
Yeah, but if we read a news article that was like Elon Musk, invisible man, we'd be like, yeah.
Yeah, it'd be a news article. But my point is, what is more likely? That somebody has invented something that it hasn't even been close to being made yet, or an abused girl has PTSD?
Yeah.
You know, again, hashtag believe women. I'm just saying from, you know, a grounded standpoint and even the asshole brother who is definitely lying, like if he's not lying, his response is reasonable when he talks his next lines where he says, you know, hey, don't let him like rule over you in death. All I'm saying is I wouldn't call them stupid for not believing her on this. Like it's just so far-fetched. It's something out of a sci-fi movie.
Yeah.
You know, and how many sadly, how many times have we seen this kind of PTSD in abuse victims? It happens all the time.
Back to my original point, Adrian, once again, a reminder that he has unlimited funds. He is a brilliant man. He came up with the ability to be invisible. And what is he doing with it? Abusing an ex-girlfriend. Get a fucking life. Go to Bora Bora.
I mean, maybe that's only a couple hours out of his day. Maybe he's doing something else, We don't really see his inner life.
The brother, Tom, admits that his brother is a true genius, and that true genius is knowing people's weaknesses, and that the only thing more brilliant than becoming invisible is making people think that you can do it, which is a good point. He also says that he hates his brother and has this whole woe is me, I had it bad too story to share. And he says that he was relieved when he heard that his brother was dead. I don't buy this. This doesn't match with their original meeting when he was aggressively reading that letter to her. And it doesn't even match with how he was in the beginning of this meeting here. He is a manipulator just like his brother. But he ends the meeting trying to convince her by showing her the death scene photos. Next, she goes to Emily's house, who is displeased to see her. And Emily, an email came to her this morning from Cecilia saying that she's suffocating and she hates her and she wants her dead. And Cecilia is confused because she did not send this letter. She is emphatic about it, but Emily does not believe her. Because Emily is an asshole.
Yeah, and Emily says some really fucked up stuff too. She says that Cecilia was, quote, too weak to get away from the bad guys, end quote. What a bitch, with a capital C. Little fun story, trip down memory lane here though. When I was 14, somebody did this to me. There was a girl that I had the biggest crush on. And this kid who I had considered my friend, I got access to my email account. I don't know, it was in the school computer or something, and emailed her and called her a bitch and did all these weird things. And we didn't really speak. The girl and I didn't really speak much after that. I was in love with this girl as much as you could be at 14. And he completely railroaded that for me.
Did he like her?
No, he didn't even know her.
What a psychopath.
Yeah, he was absolute psycho. I mean, so this was in an area for troubled kids. This wasn't just a normal kid.
Oh, okay.
So he had his own issues. I don't really harbor any resentment towards him, but I honestly completely forgot that whole story until we were rewatching this. And I was like, oh my God, CJ did that to me. Fuck you, CJ.
Fuck you, CJ.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, get fucked, buddy. No, I'm kidding. You were 13. You didn't know better. Hope you're doing okay.
I'm mad at CJ.
Well, I mean, what if things had worked out with that girl and I never would have met you?
Let me be mad at CJ.
Okay.
I'm also mad at Emily. I'm mad at everyone because it just doesn't make sense to believe an email. I know it's an email coming from your sister's account, but who would then show up to your house hours later asking for your help?
Yeah, so this was Brianna's reaction to this scene. Wow, she is surrounded by great people. This is the maddest I've ever been in a movie. That sister was a bitch from the moment she picked her up.
Yep.
She was.
I stand by all of that.
And this is the one little thing that raises a little bit of question for me because I find it odd that they never, if she had a conversation with James about the email, they never show it. Later on in this same day, maybe 12, 13 hours later, something happens that makes it very difficult to communicate with James, which is totally fine. But in between there, I feel like she should have had a conversation. She should have been like, dude, Emily says I sent her this email and I did not send her this email. And I feel like he might have believed her. Right. But after what happens later in the day, he wouldn't. And that's, it is what it is. That is the one thing where I'm just like, why didn't she talk to James about that email sooner?
Right.
Or at all.
Or Emily. Why didn't Emily text James and be like, did you know Cecilia sent me this insane email?
Yeah.
Who doesn't have that communication?
Yeah.
So again, they're definitely not a couple because they have no romantic energy and they don't even talk to each other. She goes back to the house and she looks at her computer and finds that her account did in fact send the email. It's very harsh. Like I said, it tells her that she wishes Emily was dead. But again, who would just believe this without question? I mean, ugh. Cecilia collapses into the fetal position and cries until Sydney comes in. She encourages a girls' night with cake and she agrees. As they get up, Sydney gets slapped or hit by an invisible force. She screams for her dad, who comes in and believes his daughter right away, which I don't blame him for believing her. But it's just these things are so out of character. It makes more sense to question what is happening, I feel than to just be you're sending angry emails and slapping this child who I know that you care for.
Well, as far as we know, he doesn't even know about the email, though. That's my point.
Yeah.
Why hadn't they had that conversation?
Yeah.
But yeah.
He also tells her, I think, to go to her sister's house, so he definitely doesn't know about it. And they end up leaving. He's like, I need to take my daughter. You're scaring her. I need to take her. And this whole scene, he is very stern, very angry as they're walking down the hallway and leaving. And she's following, trying to say like, no, Adrian's doing this. And when she says that, he basically is like, enough. Like, you're scaring my daughter. I need to get her somewhere safe. And you can't even blame him because he is a good man. Like, this is an appropriate response.
No, absolutely. Like, again, he's mistaken. He's wrong.
Yeah.
But he is respectful of what Cecilia is going through, and he is communicating it in a respectful way. And it's great. I mean, again, this is just exhibit 1 million why James is the greatest man on the planet.
Once they leave, she's standing there and she says, where are you? Don't hit a little girl. Hit me.
And so, like, maybe I'm just, like, too evil. But, like, if it were me, if I'm Adrian in this situation, aren't you a little tempted to just show your face for, like, a second and be like, ha, and then, like, hide again, knowing that nobody would ever believe her, and then confirming for her that you are there? Because at this point, she knows you're there. It's not really a mystery anymore. I don't think she thinks she's going crazy. I think she knows he's there. So, like, why wouldn't you do that? Just, like, twist that knife. Be like, no one will ever fucking believe you.
Yeah.
Maybe that's too evil. Maybe I have a problem.
It was probably just like too hard to do.
Yeah.
She grabs a knife and coffee and makes a trail in the bedroom so that she sits herself in a corner and she'll, he either won't be able to come in or she'll know. Time passes and she starts talking to the doorway. And it's so strange. It's like so unsettling to just like listen to her talk to the doorway and look at the empty doorway. She just knows he's standing there.
Yeah, she's in the bargaining phase of the 7 stages of dealing with your invisible abusive boyfriend.
Right.
Yeah. She's like, please, just come out. What do you want me to do? Stop this. Please, I'll do anything. She
says, why me? You can get any girl you want with all your money and power. Again, get a life. She's like, there's nothing left to take. And then she crawls across the floor and grabs a cordless phone. She dials a number and listens. Did you know what was happening here, like immediately?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And we hear it vibrating, and it's coming from above her. And at first, I was like, oh my God, he's on the ceiling. But I was like, no, he's not on the ceiling. He's in the attic.
And before you know, like, you do find out in just a minute that he kept this up here on purpose, like, for her to find. He wanted her to find these things. Like, he wanted her to find the phone.
Oh.
Because as soon as she picks it up, he texts it, and it's like, surprise. And then there's the knife up there that he stole from the kitchen.
Yeah. I just figured he knew that she was up there, and that's why he texted it. But you're probably right.
I think so. I think a lot of what Adrian does kind of shows like he planned a lot of this. But that said, when the scene first happened, I didn't think he had planned this part. And I'm just like, why is your phone not on silent?
Yeah.
Like, that is the dumbest thing. If you are going to get an invisible suit and hide in somebody's attic, put your fucking phone on silent. Don't leave it on vibrate.
So she sets up a ladder beneath the crawl space and pulls herself up. She brought along the cordless phone and dials the number again, which leads her to where the cell phone is. And by the way, that should be enough proof. End of movie. She should be just taking that phone and going to James. She sees the pictures of herself on the phone.
Yeah, if she just
we're done here.
Grabbed that phone, brought it to James, and been like, look at these pictures of me sleeping. This is his phone.
Yeah.
How would I have it? That's pretty definitive proof.
Her portfolio work is there. There's a knife there. There's a set of keys. There apparently was other things there too, like food and clothing, to kind of show that he had been camping out there, but we didn't see that. She goes back to where she crawled in, and he texts her surprise on the cell phone, so she sees that. And then she goes back to where she crawled in.
Just would like to point out the fact that he texted her, or he texted his own phone, means he had another phone, which points to him planning this.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know why she throws the paint.
I think she could like sense somebody there or something there. So because she got that surprise text, that means somebody's watching her. Mm-hmm. So that means they're around somewhere. So she takes this paint and she dumps it down on the ladder, and
we see the suit covered in paint.
Yeah, the shape of a person.
Yeah.
Right. And you gasped.
I did.
It was a very hard gasp. Maybe the loudest gasp I've heard from you. As big as your gasps could get without becoming a scream.
Yeah. He was just a lot closer than I expected him to be. I thought, if anything, he'd be on the floor, I think.
And you were so worried about James and the paint. You were like, her friend's going to be mad. I don't think anybody cared.
It was so much paint on the floor. And he thinks nothing is happening. So like, that's crazy. Oh, what a mess. He leaves the ladder. She and he also takes the ladder away, but she manages to get herself out. She follows paint drips until they stop. In the kitchen, the faucet is running and there's paint all in the sink. Then he's there. He picks her up by the neck, chokes her. He throws her against the wall, causing her to drop the knife that she grabbed from the attic. She fights him off, hits him with a pan, but he hits her back a bunch. He ends up flipping the dining room table. Again, this scene should also be enough. Looking at the wall, James, a cop, should be able to be like, she couldn't have thrown herself against the wall. And we're done.
That's true. But I think, to be fair, the next time she sees James is like after she's been arrested.
Yeah.
So there's probably no chance for them to like talk about this.
But he, as a cop, should be like, there's something amiss here. Grabs her hair and pulls her across the floor. She smashes plates over him, and it finally gets him to lose his grip on her, and she runs out of the house, the security camera catching her running by. Wendell said this was the toughest scene to shoot because of the choreography, motion control camera use, having to paint the guy in the green bodysuit, digitally recreating some of Elizabeth's limbs for some reason, and stunt work.
So this was done partly with a person in a full green suit that was later taken out using green screen technology.
Right.
But at any point when he is grabbing her or on top of her or standing in front of her, he's blocking out the view of her limbs. So they have to add that in. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I'm sure that's difficult. I have no idea how that even works, but I'm sure it's hard.
She runs and runs, and an Uber that she ordered ends up picking her up, and she has the Uber take her to his house, the fortress from which she escaped.
Yeah, and you at this point are like, how much longer is this movie? And I was like, about an hour, because we're about an hour in, and it's a 2-hour movie. And you were another hour? Yeah. You were so unhappy. You were not enjoying this movie at all.
I was really mad. And I was expecting, I felt like this was a climactic turning point moment. So I was like, we're wrapping this up now. I didn't expect it to go on for a whole other hour. They arrive at the house. She asks the Uber to wait, saying that it could be 2 minutes, could be 20 minutes. The codes haven't changed. So she has access to the house. Walking down the hallway, there's a sheet over a sculpture, and it looks so fucking ghostly, and I hate it. She reaches the bedroom and pauses. I don't know if she pauses to look at the water or to just like look at this bedroom and be like, wow, life kind of moment. I don't know. The dog comes running up to her. And my first thought was like, oh my God, the dog has been starving. But like, no, he's not dead. So it's fine.
No, Adrian's been taking care of him.
Right.
Yeah.
She goes to the lab, the computer room, whatever. And the dog does not like that. It's like whimpering at her as she goes down the stairs. She goes right to that weird kind of setup that she saw earlier the night that she left. And there's another code to get in there, which she doesn't know. And she tries a couple things. It doesn't work. And then something makes her realize it's going to be the date that we met. And it was.
12, 14, 17.
Fucking romantic. I can't even handle it. What a guy. I love him. She inspects the whole thing. It's like a body scan. That's kind of what it looks like. There's a tablet on the wall, and she presses a red button, which then turns green, and that activates everything. And a suit materializes between the two, metal rods. She pulls off the head cover, but the dog who's on the stairs starts barking in the like doorway direction. So, Adrian's here. And I am confident at this point the Uber driver is long gone. I'm like, she's fucked. We're done here. Instead of immediately leaving, though, she grabbed the suit and runs to the bedroom. And I'm like, that's an insane choice. He is invisible. You have no idea where he is. What are you doing? She stuffs the suit into the vent where she pulled her luggage out of. And I feel like he has to know about this vent. I'm like, what are we doing? This is so stressful. Because she's sneaking around and I can't handle that. Then she stays hidden in the closet and he comes in. We have the whole camera motion showing us that, into an empty doorway and then toward the closet. The closet door slides open and she's hiding against the wall of the closet door. She watches the carpet and waits for an imprint. And when she sees that, she pushes him, I think.
Yeah, super smart, honestly.
Super smart, but also he's invisible. Why didn't he just peek his head in first? That's all he had to do. And he would have seen her right there.
Arrogance. He's in control.
The dog comes into the bedroom and starts barking, and she just runs off. And miraculously, the Uber driver is still there, so she is safe. In the Uber, she calls someone asking for them to meet her at a public place at 8 p.m. because she doesn't have much time left. And it's Emily. I can't believe the bitch showed up.
Yeah, as soon as she starts talking, you're just like, what an absolute bitch.
She was like a Karen to the waiter. She was so passive aggressive and sarcastic and rude.
Oh, yeah. And I've been that waiter before. And he definitely, like, after he left that table, went in the kitchen and was like, you guys will not believe the bitch at table 12.
Cecilia looks mentally unwell.
She is mentally unwell.
It's a stark comparison to her sister, who comes in looking really nice. And the restaurant itself looks kind of nice. It's not like a diner. Like, you would expect her to say, meet me at a diner, you know? But, like, they're at a nice restaurant and it's crowded. Cecilia begins by saying, she goes into this long explanation of how, like, Emily has this brute strength that is wonderful when she needs it and is really intimidating when she doesn't, but she needs that strength right now. Over this little thing that she's saying, you know, Emily starts smiling, they start smiling, they're making up. It's all well. She then goes into explaining the suit, and then there's a swipe, like a thakink kind of swipe.
Well, you can see the knife. You see the knife.
I did not.
Yeah, so as Cecilia's talking, you see the knife kind of come up next to her. And the thing about this knife, I don't know if you caught it in any of the commentary or the notes that you looked at or whatever, this is the knife from James's house. This is the knife that was in the attic. This, I mean, think about it. This is a big knife. This is a chef's knife. This isn't just the knife he picked up off the table. He brought this knife there, and that further implicates Cecilia in this, because how did that knife get there? She brought it.
Oh, I just thought it was like a nice steak knife.
No. I mean, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure because it
is big.
It's the same knife that slid off the table, and then she found it in the attic, and he brought it with him, probably like in his little invisible super suit, and then pulled it out and just swiped.
Yeah.
And then he just left the knife there with Cecilia.
In her hand.
In her hand, yeah.
Yeah. So what he does is he slices the sister's neck, and she just grips her neck, and then her head collapses on the table. And in the same second, he slips the knife into Cecilia's hand, who is sitting there shocked with a knife just upright, dripping blood. And people start to scream.
So this movie is not really like a violent movie. It's psychological.
Yeah.
You know, this isn't a slasher. There aren't people dying left and right. This is the first person that you see die. Mm-hmm. It's fucking brutal. Like this scene, because you're over an hour into the movie and you really feel like, okay, like he's tormenting her. You don't really know that he's going to do this, frankly, you don't know that he's capable of just slitting somebody's throat in the middle of a restaurant. So when it happens, it is just so jarring.
Yeah.
Like it's one of the things that makes this movie great is it's an awful scene to watch. I didn't even want to watch it again.
Yeah. I wrote, fuck, this got dark. This turned from like pleasantly, I fucking hate this guy to holy shit.
Yeah. And you were like, oh my God, that was unbelievable. And you just like, you seem speechless at that. Like the other thing that makes this scene and, you know, the situation that follows so powerful is like, that's one of the worst feelings, like at least for me, where it's just like you can see this great, awful injustice, like even, you know, especially if it's being, especially if you're the one that's, you know, the victim of it, but even just seeing somebody that's in this situation that you know for 100% fact is completely unfair and nobody can do anything to fix it.
Yeah.
That is one of the worst feelings. It gives you the sinking in your stomach. And like, that's the feeling I remember most from this movie, you know? Mm-hmm. It's rough.
Well, Wannell said this was brutal by design. He wanted the audience to be caught off guard, and he used the bright lights and the crowded location, plus the fact that the tension between the sisters has just been relieved. So what do you feel? You're relaxed now. They're in this great restaurant. They just made up. They literally smiled. I think Emily smiled for the first time in the film, I would say.
Probably.
And everything is fine. We're comfortable here. You know, that's exactly how I move through a horror film, is being comfortable in the light. And while I don't consider this a traditional horror film, I feel like it's more of a thriller. There's so much light. You know, she turns on the lights all the time, but the terror does in fact happen in the light. And, you know, that was also done on purpose by Wannell. He told the lighting department or whoever handles it that, like, or cinematographer maybe.
Yeah, it's a cinematographer.
This is going to be a light film. And that's why they did the attic scene actually in the dark to, like, appease the cinematographer.
Yeah, he said that was a little gift to the cinematographer because they always want to do things with, you know, mood lighting.
Right. But also, how did he know she was here? The implication of the location of the house is that it is quite far from the city.
So again, this is just me trying to search for an explanation, but given what we know about Adrian, it's likely that he probably installed some sort of like software on her phone to either listen to her or track her. Right? Because like she's sleeping, he had access to it. Or, I mean, this could even be the same phone she had when they were together. We don't know.
Yeah.
You know, and that's just kind of what I assume. But you also have to keep in mind, Adrian's not exactly working alone here.
It's confirmed by Wannell that it is only the brother that one time.
That one time. But what I mean is, like, he could help him track her or track Emily.
Yeah,
or,
true.
you know what I mean? He's an accomplice here. So he has more resources, you know?
Yeah, you're right. Okay, convinced.
I am here to defend this movie because I love it.
So she's basically taken down and taken away. They strap her down, you know, at the hospital, like wherever they take her, and she's drugged. In the hospital room, as she's basically fading out, she can see that he's there. And she can see that because there's 2 dots aligned in the corner of the room.
Yeah, and they're very easy to miss. But they're definitely there, and you see them a few more times throughout the movie.
She's left alone, but of course she's not because he's there. She's drugged. And that, I was like, I was scared. I'm like, she's drugged. She's alone with him. Like, I'm scared. And as she fades away, he says, surprise.
You know, at the very least, this situation sucks for her, but she's pretty well set up for an insanity plea and a nice, like,
oh, sure,
a nice cushy life in grippy socks as opposed to like federal women's prison. So
at this point, I definitely need this man to be dead. It's time for Cecilia to JLo Enough. It's time.
I don't get that reference.
So do you know the movie Enough?
Yeah, no, I mean, I get the reference. I just never seen the movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it's an abusive situation. There is a child involved. And so in order to get away from this man, she Krav Maga's the shit out of him. It's basically like why Krav Maga became a thing, I think.
Did she like know Krav Maga at the beginning of the movie?
No.
She goes on like a self-discovery journey to learn Krav Maga.
She was just a frail little woman and not a muscle to be found until, I don't know if she meets someone, I can't remember, but she starts learning Krav Maga. I'm pretty sure it's Krav Maga. And beats the living shit out of him. And it is so satisfying.
I feel like that's a weird movie. I don't know. The movie's just about learning martial arts to beat somebody up.
I mean, no, it's about killing assholes who deserve it.
Oh, wait, so she beat him to death?
I'm pretty sure he gets dead, yeah.
Wow, okay.
Fuck yeah. And that's what needs to happen here. And if there is any other ending, this movie is unacceptable in my eyes. Later, the police are questioning her, James and another guy. They ask her about the camera footage of her running from James's house, the email mentioning that she wanted her sister dead. She tries to explain that there's proof that she didn't do this, but I can't say anything because he's listening. I mean, she literally sounds crazy and looks crazy. James being on the case seems unethical.
Yeah, for sure.
He knows the deceased. He knows the supposed murderer. The other guy leaves them alone, and she's like, James, tell me you don't believe I did this. But his response is basically, I failed you. I shouldn't have left you alone that night.
Too good for this world, James.
I know.
Too good. I'm crying. I love him.
Next, she's in a room with a therapist who's asking if anything in the room is distressing to her. Our view is only of her. She seemingly has her back turned to the therapist and the audience. She talks to her about the blood tests and asks, did you know that you were pregnant? She turns around now and says she didn't know, but I sure did.
You did. And that's what you said. You said, I knew it. And then you said, did he fuck her while he was invisible?
Yeah, that was my first guess.
Along with the next scene plus the timeline, I think it happened when they were together is what we concluded, right?
Yeah, I feel like they purposely explain it so that we don't think that happened because that's horrible.
Yeah, it's a whole new level of terrible.
She says that can't be right. The doctor says it was recent, sometime in the last month. She is in a daze. Personally, I feel like this is her ticket out because she's pregnant and he wanted a baby. So he's not going to, I mean, is he going to want that baby to grow up in prison? Like, what's his end goal here?
I mean, if you give birth, the baby doesn't just stay in prison.
I know, but then does he want the baby to end up in foster care? Because he either has to allow that to happen or come out of this somehow. And how is he going to come out of it? That's what's running through my brain at the time. Like, how are you going to get away with this now? Like, you wanted this baby. I also wondered, is he going to end up turning it all on her? Is he going to come out and say, she's been abusing me? She's a murderer. So obviously I'm the victim here. That's what I kind of was wondering.
Yeah. As we see, his actual plan is pretty good, honestly. Like what he comes up with at the end it's smart. It's really smart.
Yeah. I mean, he is smart. Next, she has a visitor, and it's Tom, the stupid fucking brother, coming to her as a representative of the trust. The money was payable to her subject to her being mentally competent and not being committed of a crime, which is a super convenient and definitely normal contingency to have in a contract. That's so fucking weird. I feel like, did her sister read the contract? I would be like, why is this in here? Why?
I mean, it's not a contract though. It's a will. So she can just say like no and then refuse the money.
Whatever. Do you have to do everything in someone's will, even if it's absurd like that?
Well, I mean, the executor has to offer it, but she doesn't have to take it. Those are the conditions for the money. I mean, I can say to you right now, I'll give you $1 million if you don't get convicted of a crime in the next year. And you can say yes, and you can say no.
No, you're giving me $1 million, period.
But that's not what I said, and I won't give you the $1 million.
You will. His tone is different now. The first time, he didn't exactly give off like nice guy vibes. The second time, he did try to. And now that she's alone for the first time, he is acting superior to her.
Yeah, he drops the mask immediately, and he is a piece of shit. He's so smug.
She tells him that she used to feel sorry for him being handcuffed to a narcissist's wallet, but now she sees him for who he is, the jellyfish version of Adrian. Everything but the spine.
Boom. Somebody get him some ice for that burn.
He gives her some paperwork for her to sign, which does not make any... There's no excuse out of this because she is currently deemed mentally incompetent for sure and should not be signing anything, but whatever. I don't even know what the contract was for. I forget.
It was to basically say, yeah, I fucked up. Now I can't have the money. So he's basically saying you can either sign this and forfeit the money because you violated that clause, or if you refuse to sign this, it's going to be a legal matter. You're going to have to go to court and defend it and all this, blah, 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 blah. So just sign it, make everybody's lives easier. Or secret door B.
Yeah. He slides a phone across the table and he's like, agree to have the baby and go back to him. He says, you really thought he didn't know? Referring to the birth control. And he basically says that Adrian was like switching out the pills.
Yeah, 100%.
Which is also very hard to do because birth control pills come in those little containers that you have to punch out the pill. And I don't know how you switch that out, but we can live in the world where you're able to do that.
Do all birth control pills come like that, like for that reason?
I thought of that question. I was like, is this how all birth control pills come? And I feel like that has to be yes. Well, I feel like it has to be in a sort of mechanism like that so that can't happen.
Yeah, well, because there was that urban legend where like the girl was like switching out her mom's birth control or something like that with aspirin, right? But like, so did they do this as a response to that urban legend, or maybe there are birth controls that just come in a bottle?
I don't know. And each week is a different color, and I feel like that there's a reason for that too.
But also, I guess if he's a millionaire genius, he could probably pay some fucking rich other asshole friend at a pharmaceutical company to be like, give me some placebos.
Yeah, true.
Because I mean, that they do show that his reach is far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To jail for me, I would just take jail.
Yeah, that's what you said. I'd go to jail.
Yeah. She swipes away the paperwork and everything goes to the floor. And when he goes to the floor to pick it all up, she snags a pen out of his briefcase. And when he leaves, there's like this piece of paper glued to the table. And she takes off a piece of the tack.
Wait, but you missed a little part, though,
What?
while he's still there. So he tells her that Adrian knew and that he switched out her birth control. And he also says if she agrees to just let all this go, they will get her out of this, and she just has to go back to Adrian.
Oh, yeah.
and raise the child. He's like, if you just agree to go back to him and have a family with him, we can make all this go away. Which, like, how? But I don't know.
Money.
Yeah. Or maybe Adrian would go through with framing his brother for it.
Right.
But yeah, so he offers that. And she's like, get the fuck out of here. I would literally rather die. And when she grabbed that pen, you were upset. You were like, is she just going to kill herself? Is that how this movie's going to end?
Right. I was panicked.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is my note. This is what I have here. Briana, quote, is she going to kill herself? Is that the end? End quote. Then says something about JLo, and I ask what she says and says, I'll clarify that on the podcast, very matter-of-factly.
Yes.
Yeah, all I heard was like, JLo.
That night after checks, she's left alone. She goes into the bathroom stall and gets the pen that she had tacked up on the wall above the doorway, which, like, how did that person not find it? But whatever. She turns on the shower and she starts to cut herself, saying, you won't get the baby and you won't get me. But he stops her, which reveals his location. And she stabs the shit out of him with that pen.
Yeah, I don't think it was ever her plan to actually kill herself.
No.
I think she was trying to drag him out, but she knew that she was actually going to have to do something to get him to show himself.
Mm-hmm. That scene was, or I don't know how much of it was cut, but the suicide part was cut for England because that makes it like an NC-17 rating. Yeah. Graphic depiction of suicide.
That was a graphic depiction of suicide for sure.
There's no blood trail, but it does cause his suit to malfunction, so she can now see him in flashes. Whannell said that he had hoped that audiences would cheer when Cecilia stabbed him with the pen. He didn't attend every screening, but for the ones that he did, there was no cheering. He says, if you heard cheering during the scene, please tweet me and let me know. And I feel like I should tweet him because I think I cheered.
You cheered.
Yeah.
You definitely cheered, yeah. I mean, I think for me, I could see cheering and I wanted to cheer, but it's just so intense. You're so in it. The last thing you're thinking is, yay. You're like, oh my God, she's stabbing him with the knife. And there's so much more to deal with, even if this happened.
Yeah.
Or with the pen, I mean. There's no room for celebration just yet.
I celebrated.
But you did. You cheered. So go ahead. Tweet him. Tag him.
Yeah, I know.
Promote our podcast. Hashtag Go a Little Mad Pod.
Because of the ruckus, a security guard comes in. Adrian takes him out. This is a whole sequence of him essentially taking out like 7 security guards. And she's down. They're all seeing this. So the security guards are fighting this invisible force who's holding a gun, shooting people. For some reason, the last security guard, he puts the gun to his head and doesn't shoot him, leaving a witness.
Well, he didn't kill anybody else, though. He just, like, incapacitated them.
I
He
guess.
shot them in the leg. He knocked them out. He bashed their head against the wall. But, like, you don't see him explicitly kill anyone.
Yeah, it's not clear that anyone's dead, but,
Yeah.
like, no one's getting up.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he does kill somebody, I guess.
Yeah.
In a little bit. But so this is a good thing, though, right? Like, you feel for all these random security guards. But at the same time, like, there are definitely cameras.
Exactly.
There are living witnesses. She might not get everything she wants, but this is reasonable doubt for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
He leaves and she chases after him. She, I think, grabs a gun from like one of the security guards. Out in the parking lot, it's like pouring rain. And after a long sequence of sneaking around trying to find him, he finds her, really.
One thing, though, like, she runs out the front door of the hospital, and she has the gun in her hand, and there are, like, 3 or 4 security guards at the desk there, and she's like, I'm going, don't try to stop me, and she just, like, goes, and they're all saying, like, what the fuck just happened?
Yeah.
But this crazy woman with the gun just came through, and it takes them, like, 2 minutes for somebody to come out the door. How is nobody right out after her? Like, literally shoot her in the back of the head as she's running out the door.
Yeah.
Like, what are you all doing, guys?
She gets grabbed by the neck and then like smashed up against a truck. And he says like threatening things to her. Like, I don't really know what he says, except he does reference killing James's kid, I think, because that happens later. A security guard comes running out and Adrian shoots him, but doesn't kill him, leaving another witness. He runs back to his car. She chases after him. She shoots at the car, which causes him to drive erratically, crashing into another car. That guy comes running out of his car like, ooh, like the worst actor of the film. She then steals that car. Chasing after him in the car, she calls James, telling him to like get back to his house because Adrian has threatened Sydney. Adrian gets to the house first, and he's not even trying to be quiet. The girl wakes up with a start, and she grabs her pepper spray. There's nothing there, but she sprays. Her instincts, she just knew. It hits him, and he stumbles into her dresser, which basically reveals that something's there. She screams and tries to get away. James gets there while he's choking her. He lets go of her, and they end up fighting, him and James. He kicks the absolute shit out of James. I gave up on watching. Yeah. I hate watching someone get pummeled. I can't do it.
Yeah, and it's hard to fight back against somebody you can't see.
Right,
you know?
Right. Cecilia comes in, though. Does she use the fire extinguisher?
She does.
Yeah.
Yes, which they had to add with CGI later because fire extinguisher doesn't actually stick to people like it does in the movies.
Fun fact.
Yeah.
So she uses that to see him and then shoots the absolute shit out of him.
Yeah, like 8 times. That said, though, she like goes up to his body, and how she doesn't pop one more right in the middle of his brain is beyond me. Like, you have to get that headshot in.
Yeah.
I don't care if they're out of blood. I don't care if they're literally in a pool of blood. Put one through the brain. Yeah. Just do it.
She pulls off the mask, and it's the brother.
It's fucking Tom.
Tom.
Spineless jellyfish asshole Tom.
Mm-hmm. I thought James was dead. He's not dead. He's alive. Thrilled. Cut to a montage of the cops breaking into Adrian's house and finding Adrian in a wall, all beat up like he's been there for weeks. James reports that it was the brother the whole time. James's face, not a bruise on it. Not a bruise. She's insistent, saying, no, this is what he does. He makes me feel like I'm the crazy one. So she knows it's not Tom.
Yeah, no, of course it's not. How great would this movie be, though, if, like, they just ended getting back together?
I know. Well, and that's what I wrote here. Like, the filmmakers did a really good job of this because in this twist, I'm kind of wondering myself, was it just the brother? But I'm also not wondering that. I'm like, no, it wasn't just the brother. Like, why would the brother be motivated to do all of this stuff? It had to have been Adrian. Like, we are literally being gaslit.
Yeah, I mean, it gives you a question. And I guess you would point to when he said surprise. Mm-hmm. That's the giveaway that it was Adrian. Because he texts it to her.
Yeah.
He says surprise to her when he's invisible. And then a little bit later from here, at the end of the movie, he kind of alludes to that.
Right.
And that is, I feel like that was added specifically to confirm for you, because otherwise you have no evidence that it was Adrian. For all you know, it could have been Tom. But with that little surprise ad there, that's the only way that you know.
Well, first, so the surprise reference, we haven't come to that yet. That's at the very end. But yes, that was added in after the fact. They didn't say why, but it was added in after the fact. So probably for that reason. Yeah. But 2, I think it's the point for us to be wondering because it's gaslighting us. Like, just like Cecilia, we are also kind of wondering. And it just further puts you in her shoes, like, as much as you possibly can be as a viewer. You are questioning this too, while knowing that it is Adrian. Like, you know it is, but you're like, which is crazy. And like I said, Wannell did confirm it was the brother just this one time. In the end, James tries to tell her that she needs to let him do his job, but she's like, as long as he's around, no one can help me. That night, she's back at the house sleeping. She gets up, though, and calls Adrian. She goes back to the house, and we best be JLoing Enoughing it right now.
So let me ask you, had you, at this point, as she's walking up to the house, had you given any thought to the suit that she stashed in the closet?
No. Actually, I said, oh, there was the other suit, and I figured that's what the brother was wearing. Yeah. I was like, he knows about the vent, that's what the brother was wearing. He smiles as she approaches. She's all prettied up, wearing a dress and lipstick. He compliments her, telling her that she looks amazing, but she says she doesn't feel amazing. And he doesn't even address that comment. He just, like, moves on. He encourages her to come inside, acts all sheepish when they get to the table. He's like, oh, I didn't know what you would be craving for takeout, so I got all of it. How fucking sweet and adorable. There's cameras everywhere, so I'm worried that when she JLo Enoughs him, it's going to look like she just killed him out of nowhere because he looks like a really good boyfriend right now. As they sit down, his hand is shaking and he tells her that she's the only one who gets to see that because I need you. He says he's learned his lesson and would burn everything he owns just to prove that. Do it. Do it then. Burn it all. Burn this fucking house to the ground right now. Burn every last dollar bill. Do it. Her response is simply, okay. And then she says, if you want to be part of this child's life, it has to start with honesty, which means I need you to admit everything that you did. He claims that Tom controlled him. LOL. She keeps pushing, though, and gets emotional. Cut to James in the car listening, and I'm screaming. Like, I don't know if I screamed out loud or in my head only, but I was like, yes, yes, yes. She breaks down, and he comes across the table to comfort her, saying that he's the only one who can help her because I know you better than anyone else in the world. That shouldn't come as a surprise.
And so that is him telling her, I know you're trying to get a recorded confession out of me, and I'm not going to fall for that, but I am going to let you know that I did do it. You know, because
yes.
because he knows, again, like everything he does in this movie just shows that he was planning so much of this. Like every reaction that she had was part of his plan. You know, he's very intelligent. And so to me, that line came across as, yeah, I did it. And you know what? You can't do a goddamn thing about it.
Mm. Did he collect everything from the attic, I wonder?
Yes, because he brought the knife to the restaurant.
Oh, yeah. Okay. She smiles and says that she has to go clean herself up. She's in the bathroom looking at herself in the mirror. Then we cut back to him sitting at the table, smiling at her empty chair, which was just this very cool, and it was probably setting us up, honestly, for like a reverse moment where it's like the way that he's looking at the chair, the way that we look at the chair, it would be like you'd expect someone to be sitting there, but we know that no one is. Then he seemingly picks up the knife and slices his own throat. Thank fucking God.
Was your reaction?
Yeah. As he grabs his neck and falls from the chair, she runs out of the bathroom screaming, which she put on and took off that suit impossibly fast. She dashes over to him, calls 911. She backs away. Then when she knows she's out of the camera's sight and when she hangs up the call, I can't even explain how good this moment was. She goes from like, oh my God, to stone cold queen.
Yep.
And she says, surprise. As James runs out of his car, she watches Adrian take his last stupid, useless breath. I don't know, did I scream? I know I raised my arms up over my head.
You went, a queen!
Yeah. I'm just really glad that she sliced his throat. I wasn't expecting that. I don't know what I was expecting, but like a slice to the throat in the suit, doing what he did to her, chef's kiss.
It's also super ballsy because like you have a very short window of time to like get him to grab the knife and do it before he can like resist you. If he even like senses that happening and you don't do it quick enough or you fumble your hand a little bit, he can like resist your arm and then suddenly it's a problem.
Yeah.
But
it wasn't.
No, she worked it out.
She used the closet suit. Back to that. James comes running in as she's on her way out with the bag and the dog. She's relaxed and he's in panic, but she's like, it's fine. He killed himself. He doubts her, but she's like, you heard it, right? He killed himself. And he agrees. He watches her as she walks away with the dog. Hell yeah, girl. You walk with that dog. Legally Blonde style. I also hope that her next stop is Planned Parenthood.
Yeah, so that's what you said as the movie faded to black. Now to the abortion clinic.
Yeah.
There's an episode of Family Guy that was made but never made it to air because it was controversial.
Oh, God.
And it is about Lois potentially getting an abortion. So the plot of the episode, just super quick, is she has college friends ask her to be a surrogate. She becomes a surrogate for them. They die. And then the plot of the episode is, you know, this decision of whether to do it or not. Peter becomes hilariously anti-abortion because it's so funny, you know. And, you know, again, this was like before we thought Roe was in danger. So you couldn't make it today, but it's okay. And then, you know, at the end of the episode, they're kind of all sitting around and Lois is like, you know what? I'm going to have the baby. This will be good for this family. It'll be good for everyone. And then Peter just turns to the camera and goes, she's getting the abortion. And then the episode ends, just slammed to black. And that is how I imagine this episode ending. I mean, this movie. That is how I imagine this movie ending. Because, I mean, you don't want that kid, right?
No.
Yikes. I'm sorry to anyone that's deeply offended by this conversation, but also I'm not.
No. I mean, and we have genetic evidence. The brother and Adrian are narcissistic sociopath. So what are the chances that your kid isn't going to be too?
Yeah, exactly. Same exact reason I'm not having children. These genes cannot be passed on.
Oh my gosh. So I mentioned this earlier, but if it didn't end this way, I probably would have broken up with you for showing me this film and making me so angry, only for it to end up with not this ending. We're done.
I don't believe you.
I was kind of pissed at first with it being the brother. It just didn't really make sense because, like, what did Adrian tell the brother? You go put the suit on. You go do all this stuff. And then what? And then what? And I'm going to pretend to be that you kidnapped me. Who agrees?
Well, there is no then what, because it's exactly like Cecilia said. He's his bitch. Like, he has no spine. He's just going to do whatever he tells him to do.
Yeah, that's true.
You know, he's going to be like, oh, yeah, I'll do that for you. And then maybe we'll hang out, right? Oh, sure, buddy. We're going to hang out all the time. Okay, great, because I'd really like to hang out. Hey, take care of this first, then we'll talk about hanging out.
I also recognize, though, that if the brother was kept alive, she would not have been able to thrive because he's too wrapped up in it to not avenge his brother or some shit like that. So.
Oh, absolutely. She would have had to kill him, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have to get rid of him.
Okay, so let's talk about our final thoughts.
Yeah.
Jump score.
7. This isn't a huge jump scare movie, but it keeps you on edge the whole time. And the ones that are there are very, very good.
Yeah. Again, I like almost count jumps versus like tension. I gave it a 1 for jump scares because I didn't really jump very much.
Yeah, you jumped like twice.
Yeah.
But like, it's just so tense the whole time that when you do, it's really effective. And even when you don't, like, it's just like keeps you on edge. So that's mine. I get where you're coming from, though. There weren't a lot of jump scares.
No.
See, I grade mine based on quality, you know? So.
Nightlight score.
I gave this an 8. What's scarier than something that you can't see? Like something that you can't prove is there. Supernatural sci-fi elements aside, like I said earlier, just the idea of somebody being framed for murder and being that helpless and that hopeless and so totally alone and isolated, that's the scariest part of the movie to me. And that's what really like sticks with me when I think about this movie. So that's what keeps me up at night. So that's an 8.
My Nightlight and Scaredy Cat are the same, so I'm going to reveal them at the same time. It's a 7. And almost for the same reason, when we finished this movie, I didn't really give it a second thought. I was like, it was a great movie, but I'm not like scared. And then that night, I couldn't sleep well. And it wasn't because of the movie, it was because I'm sick. But when I would go out into the hallway to go to the bathroom, I'd be okay going to the bathroom, but then coming back, I always got nervous.
And that's, to me, that's like one of the best kinds of horror movies, is like where you walk away thinking you're totally fine, totally unaffected, and then it just slowly creeps into your brain and it just sits there and you just have to live with that. And that's the best kind of scary movie.
That's funny because I think that's the worst and I hate it. And it's just like, oddly enough, it is one of those concentrated situations. Like, I'm obviously not in that kind of situation. I'm never going to be in that kind of situation. And it's just her experiencing this. And he's dead now. So, like, there's no concern. But still, I don't like that. The whole invisibility thing of it is... I didn't watch this as a horror movie. I watched this as a thriller. But at night, I'm like, no, that was a horror movie.
Yeah.
So what's your horror bus score?
So this is a 10. Part of me wants to give it a 9 because, like, something about it, like, I look at the movie and I go, that movie's not a 10. There's nothing. It's not a perfect movie. But, like, then I sit and I think about it and, like, what would I change about that movie? I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
It's great the way it is. And that's a 10, right? Like, you can't ask, if you can't think of a way to make it better, it can't be better.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in my eyes anyway, it can't be better, obviously.
Right.
But yeah.
Well, for my near fright, I was being critical of it. I initially put 8, but you're right. It's a 10. Like, talking about it, talking this all out, like, it's a 10. It ends exactly how I wanted it to end. So
yeah.
10 out of 10.
All right. I think this is our first unanimous 10.
Possibly.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about what our next movie is. I'm extremely excited.
Is it Hocus Pocus?
Hocus Pocus 2, the new one.
Oh, right. Hocus Pocus 2. When does that come out? Friday, September 30th.
Yes.
Okay.
So we'll be watching, and our next episode will also be the following week. So we're releasing this on Thursday, the 29th, and then we're releasing next week. So for October, we are doing back-to-back episodes.
Yeah, you're going to get 5 episodes in a row, starting with this one. This is number 1.
Yep.
And then the next 4 weeks after this, bam, 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 bam. You are going to get so sick of us.
So everyone, make sure you watch Hocus Pocus 2 when it comes out.
Spooky season, baby. And I promise after Hocus Pocus 2, because we really just, again, we need to cleanse Brianna's palate a little bit after putting her through this trauma. So we need something light. We need something fun. We've got some really good horror movies coming up in October. What do we have?
Scream 2.
Our first sequel.
Yes.
It's going to be fun.
The Witch.
The Witch, yes. Modern classic.
And in honor of the last Halloween coming out, we are watching the first.
The original Halloween. That was something I was like kind of on the fence about doing. I want to save like, you know, the big movies for like milestone episodes, and also like when we're better at this. Like I think we're good at it now, but you really want to find your stride before you cover something so legendary, because like the last thing you want to do is in 200 episodes have a better format and a better style, and then like, oh, we have to revisit that movie. But it's fucking Halloween. Yeah. And it's Halloween. So we're going to watch Halloween.
Right. And first of all, I'm not revisiting any movies ever. But second of all, we could consider this a milestone because it will be around a year. So
that's true.
Yeah.
1 year anniversary.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to Go a Little Mad. Please be sure to follow or subscribe to us on your favorite pod platform, and like us on Instagram and Facebook at Go a Little Mad Pod. Visit goalittlemadpod.com to continue the conversation about each episode, and you can help us spread the word with a quick review and a 5-star rating. Did you know that you can 5-star rate every time you listen to an episode? Yeah, you can do that. That apparently helps with rankings. So, you know.
This can't be stressed enough. We would love to quit our day jobs. Please, just help us with that little goal, okay?
Coworkers listen to this, so I will say nothing.
My coworkers do too, but they know where my mind's at.
Or grab some merch from our TeePublic site. Your sharing makes all the difference.
Yep.